alone in the void. The planet Amara was a dazzling blue gem in the endless expanse of space. Known for its sprawling oceans and advanced floating cities, it stood as a beacon of harmony and innovation. The Amarans, an elegant alien species with shimmering, bioluminescent skin and piercing silver eyes, had perfected the art of blending nature with technology. Their cities floated gracefully above the waves, powered by crystalline energy harvested from the ocean depths. But this peaceful paradise had become a battleground. The Zarkan Horde, a ruthless and expansionist alien force, had invaded Amara without warning. Their technology was brutal, their tactics merciless. They sought to strip the planet of its energy crystals and enslave its people, leaving destruction in their wake. The Amarans, though brilliant engineers and scientists, were not warriors. They had little experience in combat, and their defensive systems, while advanced, were no match for the Zarkans' relentless onslaught. The Galactic Coalition had dispatched a task force to aid the Amarans, but the Zarkans were cunning. They intercepted communications and launched ambushes, crippling the Coalition's efforts. One such ambush left the Coalition's elite rescue team scattered and broken, their mission to extract the Amaran leadership now a near impossibility. Among the survivors was Captain Elias Vega, a seasoned human soldier with a reputation for achieving the impossible. Vega's dropship had been hit during the descent, forcing a crash landing in the middle of a devastated coastal city. The once thriving metropolis was now a ghost town, its elegant spires reduced to rubble and its glowing energy bridges shattered. Fires burned unchecked, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of destruction. As Vega emerged from the wreckage, his combat suit's AI scanned the area, its voice calm and clinical. Hostile forces detected. Multiple Zarkan patrols within a 2-kilometer radius. Communications systems offline. Recommends stealth protocols. Vega grimaced, clutching his plasma rifle. Of course they're nearby, he muttered. Nothing's ever easy. He surveyed his surroundings, his sharp eyes scanning for any sign of survivors. The city was eerily silent, save for the distant rumble of Zarkan war machines. The Amarans were either hiding or had been taken. His primary objective was clear: find the Amaran leadership, protect them, and get them to the extraction point. If he failed, the planet would fall. Moving quickly and silently, Vega navigated through the ruins, his senses on high alert. His suit's HUD highlighted potential threats and paths of least resistance, but the tension was palpable. Every shadow could hide an enemy, every sound a potential ambush. He found his first clue near a collapsed bridge. Tracks in the dust, small, light footprints, unlike the heavy tread of Zarkan boots. Amarans. Following the trail, he came across a hidden entrance to an underground shelter. The door had been forced open, its edges scorched by Zarkan plasma weapons. Damn it, Vega hissed under his breath. Drawing his weapon, he descended into the dark, narrow tunnel. The air grew colder as he moved deeper underground, the faint glow of his suit's lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. He found the Amarans huddled in a large chamber, their bioluminescent skin dimmed with fear. Among them were 3 figures who stood out, clearly the leaders he had been sent to rescue. Lady Sieria, the matriarch of the Amaran Council, exuded a regal air despite her disheveled state. Her silver eyes met Vega's with a mix of relief and skepticism. Beside her was Kelia, a brilliant scientist and engineer, her hands trembling as she clutched a makeshift weapon. The third was Varis, a young warrior in training, his face set in grim determination despite his inexperience. "Who are you?" Sieria demanded, her voice steady but tinged with distrust. "Captain Elias Vega, Galactic Coalition." "I'm here to get you out," he replied, keeping his tone calm and authoritative. Kelia frowned. "Where's the rest of your team?" Vega hesitated for a split second. "They didn't make it. But I'll get you to safety. We need to move, now." Varys stepped forward, his youthful bravado clashing with the fear in his eyes. "We've been hiding for days. The Zarkans are everywhere. How do you expect us to get past them?" Vega smirked faintly. "By not giving them the chance to stop us." Sieria studied him for a moment before nodding. "We'll trust you, Captain. But know this, if you fail, Amara falls." I don't plan on failing, Vega said simply. The group moved swiftly, guided by Vega's expertise. He led them through the underground tunnels, avoiding Zarkan patrols and traps. At one point, they encountered a group of Zarkan scouts. Vega took them down with precision, his plasma rifle flashing silently in the dim light. The Amarans watched in awe as the human soldier moved with deadly efficiency, his every action purposeful and controlled. You're not like the stories we've heard about humans, Kelia remarked during a brief pause. They say you're reckless and unpredictable. Vega chuckled softly. Sometimes reckless works. But right now, I prefer to stay alive. As they approached the tunnel's exit, Sciria placed a hand on Vega's arm. Captain, why are you doing this? Why risk your life for a people you don't even know? He met her gaze, his expression hard but sincere. Because it's the right thing to do. And because if we don't stand together, we all fall. For the first time, Scieria's stern demeanor softened. Then let us hope your strength is enough to carry us through. When they emerged from the tunnels, the city's ruins stretched out before them, the distant glow of Zarkan war machines lighting the horizon. The extraction point was miles away, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. But as Vega looked at the Amarans, he saw not just fear but a flicker of hope. And hope, he thought, was a powerful weapon. Stay close, he said, his voice firm. This isn't over yet. With that, the group plunged into the shadows, ready to face whatever lay ahead, shadows of the city. The ruined cityscape stretched before them like a shattered dream. Towers that once gleamed with Amara's bioluminescent beauty now lay broken and dark, their energy bridges collapsed into the churning waves below. Fires smoldered in the distance, their glow painting the horizon in hues of orange and red. Every step Captain Elias Vega and his Amaran charges took was a gamble against detection, with Zarkan patrols combing the city for survivors. We need to keep moving, Vega urged in a low voice, his plasma rifle held at the ready. The group crept through the remains of a once thriving market, its intricate stalls now reduced to twisted metal and scorched wood. The distant sound of Zarkan machinery rumbled through the air, a constant reminder of the enemy's presence. Kelia, the scientist, broke the tense silence. Captain, how far to the extraction point? About 2 miles, Vega replied without looking back. His eyes swept the shadows ahead, scanning for movement. But we've got to stay off the main roads. Too much risk of running into patrols. Varys, the young warrior, gripped the hilt of his Amaran energy staff. I can fight, he said, his voice steady despite the fear flickering in his eyes. If they find us. They won't, Vega cut him off. Because we're not giving them a chance. Fighting's the last option, kid. Remember that. Sciria, the matriarch, placed a calming hand on Varys' shoulder. Listen to him, Varys. Captain Vega has already saved us once. We must trust his judgment. The young Amaran nodded reluctantly, though his grip on the staff didn't loosen. Vega shot him a brief glance. The kid had spirit, but spirit wouldn't be enough if the Zarkans found them. As they moved deeper into the city, the group came across a wide, rubble-strewn avenue. The remnants of a battle were scattered across the street, burned-out vehicles, shattered drones, and the charred remains of both Zarkan and coalition forces. The stench of scorched metal and death was overwhelming. Stay low and move fast, Vega instructed, leading them across the avenue. They moved in a crouch, the Amarans following his lead. Just as they reached the other side, a distant roar echoed through the air. Vega froze, signaling the others to stop. What is it? Kelia whispered. Vega pointed to the sky. A Zarkan scout drone buzzed above the ruins, its red searchlight sweeping the ground. The group ducked into the shadow of a collapsed building, holding their breath as the drone passed overhead. The tension was suffocating. Kelia clutched a small device she had salvaged earlier, her hands trembling. Varys' eyes darted to the drone, his youthful energy barely contained. Even Sciria, who exuded a regal calm, clenched her fists tightly. The drone lingered for a moment before moving on. Vega exhaled softly and signaled for them to continue. We're getting closer, he said. But they're tightening their search. Stay sharp. They pressed on, weaving through alleys and ruined structures. Along the way, Kelia worked on the device she had salvaged, a small Amaran energy core. "If I can get this working," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else, "we might be able to power a distraction." "Good," Vega said without breaking stride. "We might need it." As they approached the outskirts of the city, the group encountered a roadblock, literally. A Zarkan patrol had set up a checkpoint at a critical intersection, with several armored vehicles and heavily armed soldiers guarding the area. Vega pulled the group back into the shadows and assessed the situation. "There's no way around," he murmured. "We've got to get through them." Varys' grip on his staff tightened. "We can fight," he said, his voice filled with determination. Vega shook his head. "Not yet. We need to create a distraction. Kelia, how's that energy core coming?" Kelia glanced up, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of the core. "It's ready, but it'll only give us one shot." "That's all we'll need," Vega said. He quickly outlined a plan. Kelia would rig the core to overload, creating a bright flash and loud explosion to draw the Zarkans away. Once the patrol moved to investigate, the group would slip through the checkpoint. Kelia nodded, her hands steady as she set the device in place. When it was ready, Vega motioned for the others to follow him to a nearby hiding spot. He placed a hand on Kelia's shoulder. "Good work. Let's make it count." Kelia activated the core, and moments later, a blinding flash lit up the night, followed by a deafening explosion. The Zarkan patrol immediately sprang into action, rushing toward the source of the noise. Vega watched them go, his sharp eyes scanning for any stragglers. "Move," he whispered, leading the group through the now unguarded checkpoint. They moved swiftly but carefully, their footsteps muffled against the rubble-strewn ground. They had almost made it past the intersection when a Zarkan soldier appeared from the shadows, its massive form blocking their path. The alien raised its weapon, a guttural growl emanating from its throat. Before the soldier could fire, Varys lunged forward, his energy staff crackling to life. With a fierce yell, he struck the Zarkan across the chest, sending it staggering back. Vega reacted instantly, firing a precise shot that took the alien down. "Nice timing, kid," Vega said, nodding at Varys. Varys stood frozen for a moment, his chest heaving, before Syria pulled him back. "We need to keep moving," she urged. The group pushed forward, the sounds of the Zarkans investigating the explosion fading behind them. They finally reached the edge of the city, where the ruins gave way to a dense forest. The extraction point was just beyond the trees. Vega paused, taking a moment to catch his breath. He glanced at the Amarans, their faces weary but determined. They had made it this far, but the hardest part was still ahead. "Into the forest," he said. "Stay close. We're almost there." As they disappeared into the shadows of the trees, the distant hum of Zarkan war machines grew louder. The enemy was closing in, and time was running out. Vega tightened his grip on his rifle, his resolve unshaken. Whatever it took, he would get them to safety. Failure was not an option. Into the wilderness. The forest surrounding the ruined city of Amara was a world of its own, a dense, alien wilderness teeming with luminous flora and unpredictable dangers. Massive trees, their trunks wrapped in vines that pulsed with faint light, stretched into the canopy above. The ground was covered in a carpet of bioluminescent moss that glowed softly with each step. It would have been breathtaking if not for the looming threat of the Zarkan forces, whose presence was never far behind. Captain Elias Vega moved at the front of the group, his plasma rifle at the ready. Behind him followed Lady Syria, her silver eyes scanning their surroundings with a quiet intensity. Kelia, the scientist, held the small tools she had salvaged tightly, while Varys, the young warrior, kept his energy staff at the ready. Each of them was alert, their survival instincts heightened by the weight of the moment. "The extraction point is just beyond the ridge," Vega whispered, pointing ahead. His voice was calm, but his gaze remained sharp. "If we can keep a low profile, we should make it there undetected." The group nodded and pressed forward, their movements quiet and deliberate. But the forest had its own challenges. Strange, insect-like creatures skittered across the moss, their translucent bodies glowing in the dim light. High above, the faint screeches of predatory birds echoed, sending shivers down their spines. As they moved deeper into the forest, Kelia stumbled over a gnarled root, nearly falling. Vega reached out, steadying her. "Careful," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Sorry," Kelia muttered, glancing around nervously. "It's just, everything here feels alive. Watching us." "You're not wrong," Vega replied, scanning the shadows. "This place is dangerous, but it's also cover. The Zarkans won't have an easy time finding us here." Varys glanced at the trees, his grip on his staff tightening. "What about the creatures that live here? They might find us first." Vega didn't respond immediately. Instead, he pointed to a faint trail winding through the trees. "Stick to the path. We'll move faster that way. And stay close." The group pressed on, their pace quickening. Every step took them closer to the extraction point, but also deeper into the forest's mysteries. The air grew cooler, and an eerie silence settled over them, broken only by the soft crunch of their footsteps on the moss. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled through the trees. Vega froze, holding up a hand to signal the others to stop. His eyes darted around, searching for the source of the sound. "What was that?" Sayeria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Vega could answer, a massive, four-legged creature emerged from the shadows. Its fur shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. Its eyes, glowing a menacing red, locked onto the group. It was a predator, and it had just found its prey. "Don't move," Vega said quietly, his voice steady. He raised his rifle slowly, keeping the creature in his sights. The beast snarled, its muscles tensing as it prepared to lunge. Varys, unable to contain his nerves, stepped forward, his energy staff crackling to life. The sudden motion drew the creature's attention, and with a deafening roar, it charged. "Get back!" Vega shouted, firing his plasma rifle. The bolt struck the beast's flank, but it barely flinched. Its bioluminescent patterns flared brighter, as if fueled by the attack. Varys swung his staff, landing a glancing blow on the creature's side. It snarled and swiped at him with a massive claw, sending him tumbling to the ground. Kelia screamed, and Sayeria pulled her back as Vega stepped in front of them. "Focus fire on the head," Vega ordered, firing again. This time, his shot struck the creature's glowing eyes, making it howl in pain. It staggered but didn't retreat. Varys scrambled to his feet, his face pale but determined. "I can distract it," he called out. "Don't be stupid, kid." Vega barked, but Varys was already moving. The young warrior darted around the creature, using his staff to draw its attention. It roared and turned toward him, giving Vega the opening he needed. "Now!" Vega shouted, aiming carefully. He fired a single, precise shot that struck the creature's exposed throat. The beast let out a strangled growl before collapsing to the ground, its bioluminescence fading as it lay still. For a moment, the group stood in stunned silence, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Vega lowered his rifle and turned to Varys. "You're lucky that worked. Let's hope there aren't more of them." The group continued their journey, their nerves frayed but their resolve unshaken. As they climbed the ridge, the forest began to thin, giving way to a rocky plateau. From the top, they could see the extraction point, a clearing marked by the faint glow of a coalition beacon. "There it is," Vega said, his voice filled with relief. But his expression darkened as he scanned the area. "And it looks like we're not alone." Below, Zarkan soldiers were setting up a perimeter around the clearing. Their war machines rumbled ominously, and their red searchlights swept the area. The extraction ship was nowhere in sight. "They beat us here," Kelia said, her voice trembling. "Not for long," Vega replied, his jaw tightening. "We're getting through them. No matter what." The group huddled together as Vega laid out a plan. It would take every ounce of their combined strength, ingenuity, and courage to reach the beacon and secure their escape. The odds were against them, but they had come too far to turn back now. With the extraction point so close yet so perilous, the next step in their journey would be the most dangerous yet. But as Vega looked at his Amaran companions, he saw determination in their eyes. Stay strong, he said, his voice resolute. This isn't over yet. With that, they prepared for the final push, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The fight for survival had only just begun. The final push. The rocky plateau stretched before them, its jagged edges illuminated by the dim glow of the coalition beacon in the clearing below. The extraction point was so close, yet the Zarkan forces patrolling the area turned it into a fortress of danger. Vega crouched low, scanning the enemy positions with the scope on his rifle. His sharp eyes caught every detail, the heavy war machines lumbering near the beacon, the soldiers armed with plasma rifles, and the buzzing scout drones weaving through the air. We're outnumbered and outgunned, he muttered. But we've got the element of surprise. Lady Cyria knelt beside him, her silver eyes narrowed. What's the plan, Captain? We can't afford to wait. If those machines fortify the beacon, we'll never reach the extraction ship. Vega nodded. We move fast and hit them hard. Kelia, can you rig another distraction? Something big enough to draw their attention away from the center? Kelia, clutching her salvaged tools, hesitated. I can try, but it'll take time. And we don't have much of it. You'll get your time, Vega assured her. He turned to Varys. You and I will create a diversion. Hit them from the flank and make enough noise to keep their eyes off Kelia. Cyria, you're with me. Once we've cleared a path, we all converge on the beacon. Varys straightened, gripping his energy staff. I'm ready. Cyria gave a curt nod. Let's not waste any more time. Kelia set to work, her hands moving with precision as she assembled a makeshift explosive device from the scraps she had salvaged earlier. Vega and Varys moved to the edge of the ridge, positioning themselves for the first strike. Below, the Zarkans moved with their usual brutal efficiency, their guttural voices carrying faintly in the still air. On my signal, Vega whispered, his voice calm and controlled. He glanced at Varys, who nodded, his youthful face set with determination. The moment came swiftly. Vega fired the first shot, his plasma rifle releasing a sharp crack as it struck a Zarkan soldier square in the chest. The alien fell with a grunt, and chaos erupted. Varys charged forward, his energy staff crackling with light as he leaped into the fray, striking down another soldier with a powerful swing. The Zarkans reacted quickly, their war machines rumbling to life as soldiers shouted orders. Plasma bolts zipped through the air, forcing Vega and Varys to dive for cover behind a cluster of rocks. Vega fired again, his shots precise and deadly, while Varys used his agility to keep the enemy off balance. Meanwhile, Kelia worked feverishly, her hands trembling as she connected wires and adjusted the power core on her device. Cyria stood guard, her sharp eyes scanning the ridge for any signs of approaching danger. Hurry, Kelia, she urged. We won't hold them off for long. I'm almost there, Kelia replied, her voice tight with focus. Down below, the Zarkans began to regroup. One of the war machines, a massive, spider-like construct bristling with weapons, turned its attention to Vega and Varys. Its plasma cannon glowed ominously, charging for a devastating shot. Move! Vega shouted, grabbing Varys and pulling him to the ground just as the cannon fired. The blast struck the rocks behind them, sending shards of stone flying in every direction. Vega grimaced, his suit's armor absorbing most of the impact. We've got to take that thing out, or we're toast. Varys nodded, his grip on his staff tightening. I'll distract it. You go for the core. Before Vega could protest, Varys darted out of cover, weaving through the chaos with remarkable speed. The war machine turned, its cannons tracking him as he leaped and rolled, evading each blast by mere inches. Vega used the opportunity to move into position, aiming his rifle at the machine's exposed power core. Come on, he muttered, steadying his aim. He fired a precise shot, and the plasma bolt struck true. The machine let out a mechanical screech as its core overloaded, erupting in a fiery explosion that sent shockwaves across the clearing. Zarkan soldiers nearby were thrown off their feet, and for a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Kelia seized the moment. It's ready, she called, activating the device. A brilliant flash lit up the ridge, followed by a deafening boom. The Zarkans, already disoriented, turned their attention to the explosion, leaving the path to the beacon momentarily unguarded. "Go!" Vega shouted, waving the group forward. Kelia and Sieria ran toward the clearing, with Vega and Varys close behind. The Zarkans quickly realized the ruse and began to regroup, their soldiers shouting as they opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, forcing the group to zigzag as they ran. They reached the beacon just as the sound of engines roared overhead. The extraction ship, a sleek coalition transport, descended from the clouds, its thrusters kicking up a storm of dust and debris. The ship's side hatch opened, and a coalition pilot waved them aboard. "Get in, now!" Vega and Sieria helped Kelia and Varys climb into the ship as the Zarkans closed in. One of the war machines aimed its cannon at the ship, charging for a shot. Vega turned and fired a volley of plasma bolts, striking the machine's legs and causing it to stumble. Sieria joined in, her precision blasts disabling the machine just as it prepared to fire. "Captain, we have to go," the pilot called. Vega turned, leaping onto the ship's ramp as it began to lift off. The Zarkans fired after them, but the ship's shields absorbed the impacts. Inside, the group collapsed onto the floor, their breaths ragged but their faces filled with relief. "We made it," Varys said, his voice shaking with exhaustion and triumph. Kelia nodded, her hands trembling as she set down her tools. "I can't believe it." Sieria placed a hand on Vega's shoulder, her expression one of deep gratitude. "You saved us, Captain. Amara owes you a debt it can never repay." Vega shook his head, his face grim. "It's not over yet. The Zarkans won't stop here. We've bought some time, but the fight's far from finished." As the ship ascended into the sky, leaving the burning city and the Zarkan forces behind, a sense of determination settled over the group. They had survived the impossible, but they knew that this was only the beginning. The war for Amara, and for the galaxy, was far from over. For now, though, they had won a small but vital victory. And that was enough to spark hope. Rising resolve. The coalition transport soared through Amara's atmosphere, its engines humming steadily as it ascended into the safety of the upper stratosphere. The once distant horizon revealed the full extent of the Zarkan invasion. Pillars of smoke rose from multiple cities, and the faint glow of plasma fires dotted the planet's surface like scars. Inside the ship, Captain Elias Vega stood near a viewport, his expression grim as he took in the devastation. Behind him, Lady Sieria, Kelia, and Varys sat on the transport's metal benches, their exhaustion evident. The weight of survival hung heavily in the air, but so did a renewed sense of purpose. Kelia broke the silence, her voice tentative. "We've escaped, but what now? The Zarkans won't stop with Amara. If they succeed here, they'll move on to other planets." Sieria nodded, her regal demeanor returning despite her disheveled appearance. "Captain Vega, you've seen what they're capable of. What would you advise?" Vega turned to face them, his gaze steady. "First, we regroup. The coalition needs to know what's happened here. They need to understand the scale of this invasion. After that," he paused, his jaw tightening. "We fight. We hit them where it hurts and push them back. But to do that, we'll need more than just soldiers. We'll need allies, technology, and a plan." Varys leaned forward, his youthful energy rekindling. "We can help. Amara's people might not be warriors, but our technology is unparalleled. If we work together." Sieria raised a hand, silencing him gently. "Your enthusiasm is admirable, Varys, but our resources are scattered, and our leaders are in disarray. It will take time to rebuild." Vega crossed his arms, his voice firm. "Then we start now. Every second we delay gives the Zarkans more ground. Your people have something the coalition doesn't: intimate knowledge of these crystals. That could be the key to turning this war around." Kelia's silver eyes brightened. "You mean weaponizing the energy crystals?" "That's possible, but it's dangerous. If we miscalculate. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe," Vega interrupted. "The Zarkans aren't going to stop, and neither can we. You're one of the best engineers on your planet, Kelia. If anyone can make this work, it's you." Kelia hesitated, her hands fidgeting with a small tool from her belt. Then, with a deep breath, she nodded. I'll do it. But I'll need time and resources. Vega offered a rare, reassuring smile. We'll get you both. Suddenly, the ship jolted violently, throwing them off balance. The pilot's voice crackled through the comm system. Brace yourselves. We've got Zarkan fighters on our tail. The ship shuddered again as enemy fire struck the shields. Vega grabbed a handle on the wall to steady himself, barking orders. Kelia, get to the cockpit and see if you can boost the shields. Varys, help secure the cargo. Sieria, stay with me. The ship swerved sharply, forcing the Zarkan fighters to overshoot before circling back. Their sleek, black forms glinted ominously in the sunlight, their weapons glowing with charged plasma. Vega moved to the cockpit, where the pilot was frantically adjusting controls. We can't outrun them for long, the pilot shouted. They'll tear us apart before we break Atmo. Kelia slid into the co-pilot's seat, her fingers flying across the control panel. I'm diverting auxiliary power to the shields, but it won't hold forever. Vega scanned the displays, his tactical mind racing. What about the ship's weapons? The pilot grimaced. Minimal. This transport wasn't built for combat. Then we make them count, Vega said, his voice cold with determination. Kelia, keep those shields up. I'll handle the rest. He returned to the main cabin, where Varys was securing crates of emergency supplies. Vega opened one, revealing a portable rocket launcher and a few high-yield plasma charges. Varys, you ever use one of these? Vega asked, handing the young warrior the launcher. Varys hesitated, then nodded. Not like this, but I'll figure it out. Good, Vega said, slapping him on the shoulder. Time to learn fast. The rear hatch of the transport opened slightly, exposing them to the deafening roar of wind and the vast expanse of the sky. Vega and Varys positioned themselves near the opening, their eyes locked on the pursuing fighters. Wait for my signal, Vega shouted over the noise. We only get one shot at this. The Zarkan fighters closed in, their plasma cannons lighting up as they fired. The ship's shields flickered under the barrage, warning lights flashing across the cockpit. Shields at 50%. Kelia called out. We can't take much more of this. Hold steady, Vega replied, his voice calm despite the chaos. He waited until the lead fighter was almost on top of them, then shouted, now. Varys fired the rocket launcher, the missile streaking toward the fighter with deadly precision. It struck the enemy ship head-on, detonating in a brilliant explosion that sent debris raining down. One down, Vega muttered. He grabbed one of the plasma charges and hurled it toward the second fighter. The device latched onto the enemy ship's hull before detonating, consuming it in a fiery blast. The final fighter broke off, retreating into the distance. The transport shuddered as the rear hatch closed, and the pilot's voice came over the comm again. We're clear, for now. Vega slumped against the wall, exhaustion washing over him. Varys let out a shaky breath, his hands trembling as he set down the launcher. Sieria approached them, her expression filled with gratitude. You've given us a fighting chance, Captain, she said softly. For that, we are in your debt. Vega shook his head. We're not done yet. This is just the beginning. As the transport ascended into orbit, the tension in the cabin eased slightly. But everyone knew the fight was far from over. They had survived another battle, but the war against the Zarkans was only escalating. For now, though, they had hope, and hope was a weapon far more powerful than any the Zarkans could bring.